Welcome to the Panther Planet podcast. This conversational series explores how international traditions, cultures, and experiences impact one identity as a local and global citizen. This season, Pader, Ava, and CRIS are going to show you how our interconnected worlds are smaller than we think. And despite our differences, the human experience is universal. I'm CRIS.
This is Pader.
I'm Ava.
And this is Panther Planet. So, the Panther Planet podcast is produced by the UW Milwaukee Global Studies Department, UW Milwaukee Language Resource Center, and UWM students. It is founded by the U.S. Government National Resource Center grant. This episode may contain sensitive content. In today's episode, we are talking trends and the double-edged sword of this modern era affecting cultures and the domino effect of this vicious cycle.
Trends make us lose the individual. We see a lack of individuality in today's culture with the rise of microtrends, social media, and influencers. We see this downturn in the idea of cultural appropriation versus appreciation. Trends eventually become culture. However, we are seeing lately that trends are watering down our cultures and looking to existing culture to determine society's identity and ingenuity. Cultures are made up of individuals, and it only makes sense to foster the individual. Individuals should strive for personal excellence, positively impacting their environment as a whole. So we want to get into today why we have problems with this today because of trends and what we're doing to solve it and address those problems.
But first things first, what are macro and micro trends? So the first one, microtrends, are defined as a major shift in consumer behavior that will direct the business landscape in the long term, that have a cross-industry impact and evolved over time. And we could even say, in simpler terms, that these are trends that are so big that have become part of our culture and the way of life that we have. Also, a microtrend on the other side is a tendency in the direction of some phenomenon that is pervasive within the sphere of influence that may only last for a few years or even months or weeks. At the speed in which the internet world moves, most trends last for about a couple days at this point. So we have many examples of micro and macro trends, but if we want to use a big example of a macro trend, we could even say language as a whole. The structure of written language is something that in the past, in the very early stages of humanity, didn't exist. Further into history, we created this thing that became very popular among people and became one of the very first trends of history. But then we can go back into a little more recent time, something little that happened that everyone started doing, and we could say things like, I don't know, what could we say? Something
for a microtrend? I feel like
scrunchies.
Oh,
yes.
Oh, that's a really good example, actually.
That's really good. What about a macro trend? An idea of something big that...
Sneakers.
Sneakers everywhere, formal, casual evening, anytime, everywhere, sneakers. Or Crocs.
Crocs.
Which I hate, but it is what it is.
They're comfortable. My little sister has some, and I tried them on, and I'm anti-Croc.
Me too.
They were comfy.
I know. You will never catch me that outside with Crocs. But inside the house, once or twice.
Yeah, I feel like it's convenient sometimes to have Crocs.
Oh my gosh, my little sister there's a tab on the back. She'll be I'm going to put them in sport mode. And she flips them up.
I know what you're talking about.
I know. And now we even have Croc heels.
What? Yeah, I've seen those. One of my
heels.
friends has not heels, but they're the platform Crocs.
Oh, stop.
Yeah. So you see, there's plenty of trends that go from micro to macro and vice versa all the time. But all these trends come from somewhere. And I guess that the question is, who sets these trends? Who are the trendsetters? And contrary to popular belief, trends are not something new. They have always been here, as per my last example of language, written language. But trends come from people or things that we as community find aspirational, things that we want to have or be. So in the past, we could say that trends came from royalty because everyone wanted to replicate what the royals did or wore. This is exactly why we have white wedding dresses. It is not a tradition, it is a trend that started by Queen Victoria in the turn of the century. At the same time, further along, we had celebrities. Old Hollywood and everyone wanting to look like their favorite actress on a movie and having all that aesthetic of those times. And then now we have influencers in social media, and they are creating trends at a faster pace than ever before. But we must also recognize that these are not the only places that trends come from. So trends come from books, music, art, and people getting inspired, which is a whole other topic that we will get into that further along. But it's very interesting. And trends also come from places and different communities in those places. Like, it is known in the fashion industry that most of the fashion that will be seen around the world is normally 2 years. It is placed in Japan 2 years before everywhere else in the world. So in these cases, if you go to Japan today, you will see most likely the things that will become trendy in the next few years. And the same goes for many other places and many other examples that teach us how we take things from different places around the world and make it the popular thing. And that comes with its whole array of issues or possibilities.
Yeah, so kind of like talking about like inspiration and how that can be like a common excuse for cultural appropriation. So just to define appropriation and appreciation, cultural appropriation is like the unacknowledged or inappropriate adoption of customs, practices, ideas of a culture or people by members of another and often majority culture people. Meanwhile, appreciation is an effort to seek understanding, to learn about another culture in an effort to broaden their perspective and connect with others cross-culturally. And so talking about like how inspiration is an excuse, I feel like some people say that because they kind of like can't differentiate and from it being inspiration or cultural appropriation. And so I think the main kind of thing is like how the majority profits while the minority doesn't. Yeah. And while researching for this, I thought another term that was super interesting is racial plagiarism. I thought that was like another good way to like think about it because it does come from like cultures or like different races and practices.
I kind of almost like that better. Then, because appropriation, like, we kind of want to dive in today, is like, okay, there's a huge gray area.
Yeah.
And, like, racial plagiarism, I feel like that tells you straight what it is.
Yeah,
no one's about it. Like,
I get that in such a, I don't want to say controversial, but such a gray topic with such a blur line, it is sometimes complicated to differentiate between appreciation and appropriation of cultures. And I guess that's why I learned 4 markers to differentiate these things that I would love to share with you guys. And those are invitation to the culture, the intent of you in the involvement of this culture, the relationship to the culture or community, and understanding of your intersections and privileges. I feel like these four markers are something that's really important to have in mind. That will help you hopefully like know the difference between, am I appreciating this culture or am I appropriating this culture?
Yeah.
Absolutely. So we kind of want to tackle the question now of how does appropriation and creating culture as trend impact identity and impact the way we see other groups. So I don't know if anyone wants to go first. Like what comes to mind for me is like I specifically think micro trends in terms of like makeup and like for like there's this thing like Latina makeup or the clean girl look. Tomato girl I've been noticing is another.
What's that?
Yeah, I've never heard of that.
Okay, that one where I think everyone like fantasizes the European vacation and getaway, and tomato girl is like taking from editorials from the 90s and a couple other things where it's like, oh, perfect European vacation, but it's like specifically Italian, and that's why it's tomato girl.
Oh my god.
Which I'm like, how that's like really.
I guess that's the Eat, Pray, Love 2.0.
Yes, it's tomato girl. It doesn't sound as cute.
God. Yeah, I prefer the Pray, Love.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking of like makeup and beauty is a really easy one where for Latina makeup or like the clean girl look, people have called out like Hailey Bieber for, I think it was lining her lips and doing gloss and something specific, or the fact that gold jewelry and hoops have been really in for a while, and then pulling your hair back.
And I get that the gray area of this is the fact that it is very popular now, but in the past, Latinas have been ostracized for wearing their hair that way or their makeup that way or wearing the earrings or being loud and all these different things that in the past were things that were looked down upon, but now because a white girl is doing them, no shade to Hailey Bieber, it's just as a general. Now they're popular and they're okay to do, which is something that happens with a lot of other trends and things, and it's a very gray area because then we are thinking, are we appreciating, are we appropriating, or is it okay only because they said it's okay?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the problem isn't like the style or the features or the food or like whatever it is that's being quote unquote appropriated. It's just the fact that none of these things are appreciated or celebrated when they stay in the culture where they were from. They go unnoticed, unappreciated, and even like ostracized too, particularly in the US, until they're like lifted and found for obscurity. And then like before they were off limits from the mainstream until the media decides to adopt that and be like, okay, yes, we want this.
But then people try to, in other cases, rebrand the whole thing as something completely different. Now I'm thinking the whole trend with the siren eyes.
Yeah, like kind of going on that and like what you guys are saying about it getting rebranded or like in that sense it is cultural appropriation because, you know, like the majority group can do it, but then when the minority does it, it's like wrong or blah blah blah. Like that is like why it's cultural appropriation.
Yes, and I get that also. You're not giving credit to the people who created it. You're not giving credit to the people who liked this style in the beginning and they were ostracized for it. The people who came up with the idea. You should always give credit what credit is due, and just taking something and rebranding it as your own. There's no question. There's no gray area in that section. That is appropriation. You shouldn't do that. Stay away from that.
Yeah, and for like the siren makeup you're talking about, like as an Asian person, you know, when like I realized that on TikTok when another Asian person was talking about it, I was like, that's so true, right? Because the siren makeup.
Can you explain it?
Yeah, so it's meant to have like a lifted look, and so it's like, you know, like the racist gesture for like that people do towards Asians, like pulling their eyes, because supposedly Asians all have like chinky eyes, which is like definitely not true.
We all remember 2015.
Yeah. And so like that kind of gesture is kind of transitioned into the lifted look or like the siren makeup where you're creating that effect where your eyes are like pulled out, which is like the gesture. And so, yeah, I think.
And I guess that's the only reason why it became popular is just because it was the new look that Bella Hadid was wearing after her surgery.
Okay, I would love to talk about how Bella Hadid stole Carla Bruni's face. Like, you can't steal someone's natural beauty. Talk about cultural appropriation. Another girl taking another girl's face.
Yeah.
After, like, I can't believe it.
Identity theft.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. But there comes a point too when it's like, okay, are you appropriation? I think comes with like sexualizing or like demoralizing. The people.
I mean, like now that you're talking about fetishizing or sexualizing these cultures, we can go back to your example of old Hollywood Latinas. Have always been portrayed as this spicy Latina who is a sexual monster, almost predatory, very strong-headed, and very sexual, has no regards for any authority or any power. She is the one in control. She is the one making the advantages. But in most cases, it's just a stereotype.
Yeah.
But also, it allows for people to fetishize Latinas in general, and people to think, oh, this is an exotic thing that needs to be tamed, almost like an animal that needs to be tamed. And I'm gonna be just using the example that we have more reference to, with the white savior who's going to tame this beast.
Oh, yeah.
And minorities, Latinos, we are not animals that need to be tamed. We are human beings. Thank you very much. And if you are coming into this, in those cases, relationship or conversations, whatever it is, with that thought process, stay away from us. Stay away.
I just think it gets really tricky, you know what I mean? Especially in media portrayal. Like if we're talking old Hollywood, I kind of did a little research on Rita Hayworth, and she was from Spain, had a very, like, it was Margarita Casino, I think was her name, like just a very ethnic name. Like they found her in, I think, some like Mexican dive bar type club situation, and they're like, oh, that was where she was discovered. And she had like a hairline reduction surgery. She had to change her name. Like I don't think they lightened her skin, but like who knows? You don't know.
Yeah.
And that she did all these things so she can fit the American beauty. But then there were certain aspects of Spain's culture, like the dancing that she used, that I guess Hollywood was like, okay, that's appropriate only in this setting, and we're gonna make you look super American, but we're gonna adopt that ideal of like this way and style of dancing and use it for ourselves. But you can't say you're from Spain.
Yeah.
I know.
Okay, I want to add to both of you guys. I guess going back to like how Latinos are portrayed as like very sexual. I feel like that this may be like kind of gray, but I feel like it's kind of like cultural appropriation to even have that idea, because I just feel like the way America thinks of sexual is very different from like other parts of the world, because it's like,
amen,
you know what I'm saying? Like, do you guys know how to help me describe the
I'm
difference?
sorry,
Yeah. Chris does, yeah.
Intimacy and sex and sexuality and all these constructs that we have are seen different all around the world. They are, at the end of the day, they are constructs that we have created, and the American way is not the only way. Let me repeat that. The American way is not the only way. There's many ways to do things. There's many ways of thinking of things, and more than one thing can be true at a time. There's many ways of doing things. Sexuality, sex in general, like one's own sexuality, and not meaning just sexual orientation, but the relationship you have with your sexual self is different from culture to culture. And sadly, in American culture, for a very long time, it's been very...
It's very like physical.
Yes, it's almost, and frowned upon. Sex is something bad to be ashamed of.
Yeah.
And being sexual and seductive is very something bad, especially women, because they are the most attacked in this section. Something very bad that women do. And seductive women or sexual women are bad in this point of view. But in the case of Latino culture, just to use that as an example, something that I have experience on, is that we view seduction as something completely different.
Yeah.
And is not, yes, it can be taken to a sexual place because fun and all that. But seduction in the Latino way of seduction is not always sexual.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a state of being. It's just attraction as a person. So you will. Some people may think that Latinos are very upfront or very flirty with people and all that, but it's not something sexual.
Yeah.
It's something alluring, attracting to other people. Um, it's just I don't know how to explain it really well.
Yeah.
I guess
No,
I
think
wish
you
we
did it
had
good.
another person to explain this very well. But the thing is that our relationship to seduction in American culture, it's like at the mention of the word seduction, you are automatically thinking about sex.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you're debasing the person usually in the portrayal
Thank you.
of media. If it is
Yeah.
women, for instance,
Yes.
it's like you're objectified and talking about. I think I watched this YouTube video. And it's a woman who went to the Caribbean and she's a dancer, so she studied dance there. And her whole idea of seduction was, you can use the gift of like. I don't want to say the gift, but how she explained it is like it's this drive. Oh, I'm in a job interview. I want to present my best self, look my best,
Yeah.
and show my initiative to get this job. And that's what she kind of defines seduction as.
Yeah.
And that's
I like
really
that.
different. Or like good body image. She was talking about Cuba where she visited, and she's like, oh, there's no ads. So your body image is fine, and you're praised for how you can move
of that
and like
too, yeah.
how you have rhythm and how you dance and how you have fun, and you're proud of yourself.
And you're not ashamed for it.
Right.
Because I'm glad that you mentioned Cuba because it's a very particular case. Because here, when a kid is just using this as an example, when a kid is when a kid is, they know how to convince their mother of doing something.
Yeah.
They know the face that they have to make or the tone that they have to use.
Puppy dog eyes,
Exactly.
whatever you want to use, yeah.
But here we automatically say like, don't do that. I know what you want. Like, I'm not giving up for that.
Yeah.
And we start from a very young age, from very simple and like innocent things, to teach them. No, you shouldn't do that. And you shouldn't get what you want in that way. And that also starts teaching to, I don't know, it's just, it takes us away from our seductive self because we have this idea that seduction is automatically about sex, and it's not. And then in those cases, in Cuba, for example, we don't have that. Stop doing that. They allow themselves to feel themselves, to grow, and to keep learning. And
persistence.
Exactly.
Too, like a no doesn't mean a no. It's how can I use my resources and like
disclaimer. There should be always context, and you can understand when a no means no.
Oh yeah.
There's a difference. I know that this is a very nuanced topic here in American culture, but there is a difference. And for the sake of humanity as a whole, because I know that many people will take this the wrong way. No means no, but when talking about this in Latino culture, the culture has evolved with the language. Cultures and language evolve together, and especially with the Latino culture, intonation it means different things.
Sometimes no can mean maybe depending on how you say it.
Exactly, it's not the same in English. It doesn't work the same way, sadly. But in Spanish, depending on the intonation and the context of the situation, it means different things. And you can understand that this no can, as you said, become a maybe, and this maybe can become a yes. So you have to be very careful. Why were we talking about this?
We're talking about the portrayal of women in media and how that makes us view ourselves, Latino makeup, siren eyes, or in a lot of, I read a book. Okay, super great book if you haven't read it, Interior Chinatown by Charles Yu, I think is his name. I really hope that's the case. I read it for a class, and his whole point of his book was explaining that, I wrote a book because I work in film, and in film, Asians are portrayed as the, like, kitchen workers on, he used, like, CSU, like CSI, some sort of crime show.
Yeah, a crime show.
And explain that, okay, it's like the women are being sex trafficked or are prostitutes, and they're always Asian women. Asian men are like never the lead character. They're the nerdy guy, or the smart one, or they're in the kitchen, or they're a kung fu guy. And that's a big thing for him in the book, is the character wants to be kung fu guy and like lead supporting role number 2. And he creates this world where it's all about an homage to film, but also how all the character can be is the stereotype that is reflected back at him. And the one, I don't want to like spoil it, but the one character who you never hear about is the guy who broke the stereotype and is a lawyer. And it's like, oh, we don't talk about him. Like, he defected. Like, he's doing something totally different. And his point is, what you consume in the media informs what you think of other people, informs of what you think of yourself. And it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. So when we see... I don't know how women are portrayed in media or how like certain groups are portrayed in media. It almost is a self-fulfilling reality, because then it's, oh, this is what this culture is, this is what I must be.
And we start romanticizing that idea. And romanticizing that idea then turns into fetishizing that idea and the people that come from that.
Or not giving the credit. I feel like a lot, like I recently watched a video about when I say video, it's like a reel or a TikTok, about Coachella, and how Coachella, where the concerts and everything are actually held, is like a community of people that like they don't get, it's like just not a good area, and yet people are making millions and using that space and using that land. And it's the idea that like someone is only valuable to society, like, I don't know, or maybe it's the opposite. Maybe it's the people behind these ideas and these creations are being devalued and stripped of their worth, whether it's being sexualized, like think of Halloween costumes. And why we get all up in arms about cultural appropriation is because of like the injustice. I don't think it's about taking inspiration from different things. Like with like obviously don't have malintent. I think when something's like inherently wrong. But the point is, I feel like we want the beauty, but we don't want the responsibility of talking about the complexities and the issues about the people.
I mean,
and that's a problem.
It is a problem. And keeping on the topic of sexualizing cultures and their people, I think that I've mentioned this to you guys before. The designer back in the day, John Galliano, his debut collection was heavily inspired. The first version of this collection was heavily inspired by Asian culture, but it was almost in the verge of, well, not the verge, it was sexualizing Asian traditional wear, very much so. And I won't go into detail how so. You can Google it, and it's on the internet for you to see. And that's only one of the cases where that happened with many other designers or many other people who take this thing from the culture and just make it their fantasy and their fetish, not taking into account that this may have cultural significance or religious, spiritual significance, that has a history, that there's a reason why these things are, because these old cultures, they're not there just because. They are there for a reason. They have a meaning. And sometimes their story of resistance, sometimes their story of protection. They have different meanings, different purposes. They are not just there because someone just thought of it. There's meaning, there's purpose. And just taking that and stripping it away from all its meaning and significance and just making it aesthetically pleasing, it's demoralizing. And it's very sad.
Absolutely. I think of also people dressing up as like sisters or nuns and making it like a skanky Halloween costume. God. And that's also someone's religion, or
how many nuns outfits I've seen.
Or like
or nurses.
Nurses
outfits. What else? Dressing up like Hindu gods. That's a thing. But the thing is that it's not only dressing up as a god, is that there's traditions and there's festivals where people from that culture, particularly, dress as the gods and make a representation of it. But it's part of their ceremony, their tradition, their culture. Then you have here in the States little Joe, a white boy, who is painted himself completely in blue, sticking his tongue out and putting earrings with skulls and forearms, jumping around without even knowing where that character, which is that deity from the Hindu tradition, comes from. And that's not the only example. There's many others that happen around the world.
Yeah. Can I talk about Joe again?
Yeah.
I've got a couple Joes where I grew up in my high school. And I think what's really common, you'll see young suburban boys in affluence, just like being like wearing the gold chain and doing like the drip and doing things that are like certain urban sagging. Yeah, pulling your pants down and you can see like your underwear, or just like, you know, to define it a little bit. All these things that you see in like urban culture, or like maybe urban Black culture.
Yeah, because disclaimer, trends are not only taken from culture but also communities, Black communities, and people who have minorities who have struggled, as you were saying, taken away from them.
Or I think like certain words, I think too, we were even having this conversation, certain words from like Black culture and Black communities are being like formed in the mainstream, and then people are using them and don't know where they there's a poet who did that, like
Black communities
is a word, for example.
Also from queer communities have become more mainstream, and everyone and their mother are saying a lot of words and don't know what they actually mean. And I would love for you guys to do your own research about these languages, because in queer community, these words have a meaning because they have been used for a very long time to protect oneself when they couldn't be out by themselves or express themselves freely, or they would get punished. I don't remember very well the name of the language.
While you research that, Chris, I was thinking, like, to add on to that, like, I know there's, like, a lot of debate, which is something I wonder about, too. Excuse me. And, like, if it's okay for non-Black people to use that kind of language. But the debate is that, like, they were raised, like, near the culture, like, physically, like, you're located in those type of neighborhoods, and you've interacted with the community, like... What do you guys think about that?
I guess that brings you back to the 4 markers that I mentioned at the beginning. The invitation, intent, relationship, and the understanding of your privileges. If you have that in mind, you can assess different things. And it's difficult, I would say, to say there's no such thing as black and white in this case.
Yeah.
I'll use the example because I think that they did a very good job on the Avatar: The Way of Water movie of giving this issue with the kid. I don't remember the character's name, who was a human, but he grew up with the rest of the Na'vi people, learning the language, the culture, the traditions. He was there in that culture and he knew nothing else. And still, in the character and the story, there's still problems going on between the character and the people who are from that culture. So I guess that I don't have an answer. It's still a gray area.
Yeah, it's very gray.
But I'm more, I guess that I really don't know what to say, but
I think it's different if you're like, oh, I'm this because I hang out with these people.
Yeah, that's not the same.
That's not it. But if it's like, oh, I know about this because my friends, or like I grew up here, and like this is a part of the way I grew up. Like, I don't think there's really anything wrong.
Like kids who were adopted into black families, and they grew up around that. I'll say that I don't have an answer, and we'll have to keep talking about it and figuring it out. So if any of you in the comments have any ideas, please let us know.
Absolutely, yeah. But I also think that's good. I feel like maybe we can talk about gatekeeping a little bit now, but just how certain groups or cultures are like, oh, this is only for us and you're not allowed to do this. And like we're gonna almost stifle makes more sense. like, this is ours, and this is,
Yeah.
we're going to keep what's ours. Or even, I think in the Latino community too, it's like, oh, this is indigenous people because this is part of the roots of, like, the, I guess, Latino heritage, but no, this is only for us. You know what I mean? But it's like, okay, if you're, this one woman was explaining, okay, I'm Mexican American, I'm not American enough, I'm not Mexican enough, and indigenous are like, no, this is our little circle. So, like, what am I? How do I connect with my heritage?
That happens a lot in the Taino community in the Caribbean, because for a very long time, like in school, I remember when I was in school as a little boy, we were told Taino people were extinct, completely erased from the earth. There's no one Taino that exists till this day. The years went by and we figured out, no, that's not true. A lot of them fled to other islands, other fled into the mountains or into the caves, and disappeared for a very long time, and then mixed themselves with the other people that were around for a very long time, so they were not completely erased. They were erased from paper, but their blood still is here, and their ancestors, not ancestors, the other way around, the other word. Descendants.
There you go.
Yes, that's the word. Yeah, yeah. Their descendants are still here, but it's a small community that it's still growing. But the thing is that in order for them to survive, they mixed with. That's what a Puerto Rican is. It's a mix of different cultures, and they mix themselves with Spanish and Africans, and they are a mix. Therefore, I would say that there is this big debate in the Taino and the indigenous community saying that no, you're not indigenous enough. And we are, and the debate is, particularly in Puerto Rico, the whole existence of Puerto Ricans as a whole is being mixed race. We are not just one race. Our whole existence means that we are of mixed race. We are Africans, we are Tainos, indigenous, and we're Spanish. And to say that I have less of a right to that part of my ancestry and that part of my culture and that part of my traditions, it's very sad, because the same blood that goes through your veins goes through mine in Puerto Rico. And it is sad. It is a gray area, because yes, we understand that we want to acquire the biggest amount of DNA possible of indigenous, but there's certain things that I don't know. There should be gatekeeping for certain things which are very precious and special. But at the same time, we must understand that the gate shouldn't be close to everyone.
Yeah, and that's how are you supposed to stay in ignorance because you're not learning? And isn't the whole point of cultural appreciation to learn and to not, like, just to give credit where credit is due? So how can you do that when people are just, like, shutting you out or shutting everyone out?
Yes.
Yeah, I think, like, I don't know, I guess in, like, my personal perspective, I think I have a tendency to, like, gatekeep some, like, Asian culture things, because it's, like I've seen in the past, and, like, in my past experiences that, like, oh, like, if you share, then, like, people make fun.
Yes.
Like, for example, like, with food, right? Like, people make fun, it's gross, blah, blah, blah. But, like, nowadays, like, even here in, like, Milwaukee, like, at Bayshore, I guess that's Glendale, but, you know. Like, at Bayshore, like, they have bubble tea now. They have the mochi donuts. I don't know if you guys have been, but they have the mochi donuts.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, that is not an American thing.
Yes, and that's, like, the point, right? Like you get made fun of, and then, like, for some reason now it's, like, so
the cool
popular.
kid does it, now it's popular.
And now it's, like, normal, and it's so good. But it's, like, in the past, like, I feel like you're not acknowledging that, like, even if it's not the specific foods, it's the experience of, like, having Asian foods or cultural foods, period. That, like, oh, it smells, it's not American, like, why do you eat that? Like, I think, yeah.
I do remember the days when the kids this girl who brought what's the real? I don't remember what the real name of the bubble tea.
Oh, tapioca?
Yeah, tapioca.
That.
Like the ingredient.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Back in the day, before it became popular, there was this girl, Asian girl, who brought it from her home. Her grandma had made it. She hadn't seen her grandma for a very long time, and she had come and she made it for her, and she brought it to school to show everyone something that her grandma had made. And I do remember this white kid named Joe saying, "Are those frog eggs?
Yeah.
Are you eating frog eggs?" And everyone making fun of her. It was horrifying, because I do remember that that's not the only case that happened, and it's not the only person that happened with other traditional foods. That also, it's something very common that people don't take into consideration, and that affects the kid. And then it tries to, first, it makes people want to gatekeep their things. And in more extreme cases, it makes them want to stay away themselves from their culture and those things, which is very sad.
And that's why we lose culture, too. Like, I don't know, I'm thinking historically, like, Native Americans, like in the U.S., or people assimilating to the point where, I have to re-find all this stuff about my life and about my ancestry because we kind of just totally obliterated it to fit in. And I've had similar stories where I've seen friends or like people I know, it's the same thing. It's, your food smells bad, it's weird, it's different. And it's just like ripping on people. But
going to, like, again, the macro trend, but that started as a micro trend, reggaeton.
Yeah.
And Afro-Caribbean beats in general. That has, in the beginning, the early stages, I remember, I don't remember, my mother remembers this from her time, that their parents used to say, that's not music. That's bad, you shouldn't listen to that. And it was very frowned upon. It was just for the, as they called, lesser people. And other names that I won't say because I'll get canceled otherwise. But after a while, reggaeton is also another expression of what bomba used to be back in the day, and it is still to this day. For those of you who don't know, bomba is a traditional Puerto Rican dance that was brought from our African ancestors with Taino instruments, and it was a dance of resistance. The emotions and the movements of the dance were an expression of the troubles that everyday people under slavery went through. Also, secret messages were passed through those dances. Also, making the only happy time that they had was when they were dancing and expressing their love and telling the stories of their love and what had happened that day. The gossip of the day went through the dance, and all these beautiful things, an expression of oneself without words, just through the movement of your body going to the beat. And it is very interesting because in most cases when when someone's dancing, they go to the beat of the music. But in the case of bomba, the drums go to the beat of the dancer. The dancer is the one leading the beat and the music. And just having that expression come from within yourself through your body and then express itself through the movements and therefore into the music is just such a powerful thing because it makes you one with the music and one with your expression. And what was I going to, this tangent?
Oh, you were talking about music and Bad Bunny and how everyone's singing in Spanish and bandwagon.
Reggaeton, same thing. Bomba is just the more ancient and still very prevalent and very special way of expression to us. But reggaeton, back in the day and still today, is a modern way of expressing the troubles of everyday people living in the ghetto, on the barrios, in the cities, in the towns, and they were minorities, they were people who were oppressed and who didn't have many privileges and many, what could I call it, many opportunities. And through their music, they expressed their everyday life and the things that they were going through. And let me tell you that when reggaeton started, those reggaetoneros were poets, because to write all those lyrics, you have to be a person of in Spanish we say una persona de letra, de palabra, which is a person who loves reading and gets their inspiration from the things that they read. They get inspired from those things, and Daddy Yankee is a very good example of this back in the day when it started. And he's a person that when he was writing music, he always loved to read a lot. And from there, he got the inspiration, and he used his experience in the barrios and all that to express those feelings into words that people could understand. The feelings of frustration and all the things that were going on that everyday people perhaps didn't have the vocabulary to express. This is what I'm feeling. Throughout his reading of all these texts and all that, he found the vocabulary, or created in some instances the new vocabulary to express his emotions. And that's why it resonated with so many people, because they understood what he meant. They understood the feelings that he was feeling, and many other reggaetoneros. And that wasn't well seen by other people in power at the time. But time goes by, and the reggaeton doesn't go away. It gets bigger and bigger, and it starts what's the word, compartmentalizing? It starts mixing with...
Yeah,
I don't remember the word. It starts mixing with hip-hop and rap music and all that. And it keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And now there's no way you can stop it. So when you can go against them, you unite to them.
Yeah.
And now the cool people are doing rap. Cool people are doing reggaeton. So now it's okay. Which it's great that the music is finally accepted and that we can keep spreading the messages of those songs and all those things. But it allows us to think of, why is it okay now and it wasn't okay then? What has changed? And what has changed is the type of people who are doing the music, the types of lyrics that are being written. And I guess that you take the good, leave the bad, but it takes us back to keep thinking, if it wasn't because the cool kid is doing it now, could we have gained all this success?
Yeah.
But again, I don't know. Let me know.
Yeah, I know there's like a lot that we could talk about, and like we mentioned, like there's a lot of gray space that we can also discuss. But I guess, like, what are some key things you guys found just talking about cultural appropriation, like quote unquote like trendy culture? I think like one of the main things I found, it's like it really like diminishes diversity and like culture from minority groups, just because like the majority like really claims the culture. And that's what I was thinking. So I guess, like, what do you guys think overall?
I think that, going off what you said, I think that you see only one facet of the culture through what's becoming mainstream. And I think, like, it's good. Like, oh, look at, like, my culture is being seen, being appreciated. But it's also, I don't want to say it's not special, but it becomes commercialized. Do you know what I mean? And especially in the U.S. So I think that is one thing. Meaning. Let me say that again?
It loses its meaning.
Oh, yeah.
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 Like, sometimes it's for the better. It's like, oh, we have representation, we have this, like, we're getting out there. I think there's some good things.
There's certain things that we want to be exclusive to us. And if everyone has it, then it loses exclusivity. That's why not everyone has an Hermes bag. Because if everyone were to have it, then it wouldn't be exclusive anymore. Same goes with our traditions, our culture. These things are special, and there are certain things that we want to keep to ourselves because they mean really like a lot to us, and we don't want anyone messing around with them.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've discussed today the complex implications of culture becoming trend, but what happens when we become afraid to offend others, allowing culture, tradition, and gatekeeping to dictate what we can and cannot do? In the words of Ralph Leonard, British-Nigerian writer, no culture is pure, uncontaminated, sealed existing purely within its own universe. Tune into the next episode where Ava, CRIS, and Pader discuss this gray area further.